Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. For today's Currie Cup, 5 things learned from round 6. The Currie Cup sort of entering the almost sort of the halfway point, and it's been an interesting tournament so far. And there's a couple of good moments, a couple of very good aspects of the tournament, also a couple of worrying aspects as well. And today I'm going to be looking sort of through 5 things I took away from the weekend. This coming weekend is the official halfway point. There will be 14 matches before the playoffs will start. So far we've had 6. And so after this weekend, we'll have a sort of clear idea of who the early frontrunners are and sort of who needs to do what to remain in the playoffs. With 7 out of the 18 still very much in the hunt for playoff stages, third and 7 separated by just 2 points. So it's a very, very tight tournament so far, except for the 2 frontrunners, Pumas and the Cheetahs. So basically, this is just a rundown of things that, as I said, I've taken away from the early stage of the competition. I want to know what you think down in the comments below. Please also do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, without any further ado, let's go to number 1. Right now, the defending champions have been absolutely turning it up so far in the early rounds. And they've needed to because certain teams, for example, like the Lions and potentially the Bulls in the next couple of weeks, are about to get a lot stronger as the URC and sort of it comes to an end. As the Champions Cup starts to have a couple of weekends, there'll be more weekends where the URC sides will be able to select stronger Currie Cup sides. So Pumas are very much at the moment. I mean, points difference are 161 across their 6 games, 5 wins and a loss, 25 points at the moment. So yeah, 25 points out of a possible 30. They're pretty impressive haul. Cheetahs with the same as well. But it's that points difference for me which is so impressive. And they're running in tries for fun at the moment. They've really sort of taken what they did last year and taken it up to a whole different level this year. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue this performance. They've had a couple of close shaves. They've always sort of found a way to sort of win. And that's always sort of a mark of a very good side and a potential champions winning tide. So at the moment they're setting their standards. The question is how long can they continue to play such a high caliber rugby? Now, after a disaster start and for me an very unfair sacking of Edgar Maratule, the Bulls have come back and they've won their last 2 games and they're sitting on 13 points. They're still in 7th place. However, they are sitting 2 points behind the Sharks, who are in 3rd, as well as West Province, who are tied 3rd, and they're 1 point behind the Lions and the Griquas, who are currently tied 2nd. So it's a very close table at the moment, and despite that absolute disaster start from the Bulls, they're still in the hunt at the end of the day and still very much not out of it. And that's quite important, and that's why I think, the sacking of Edgar Maratule was a bit of an overreaction because I think they've seen how quickly that they can turn things around. And I think it's unfair to just turn around and say, well, they've only turned things around because Jake White's there. I would have liked to have seen if Edgar Maratule could have turned things around. But the main thing for the Bulls as a franchise is they're probably not looking good to win the URC, for example. They're out of the Champions Cup. Their biggest chance of silverware is the Currie Cup, and I think they're going to start prioritizing it quite quickly. So the Cheetahs are a very interesting franchise at the moment because they've got Challenge Cup rugby. So they do play a bit in Europe. They don't have URC rugby, but so the Currie Cup is their sort of their standard competition. Now it's a side or a squad rather, which is basically probably one below the URC, but probably one above your standard sort of Currie Cup side. So this squad is going to be really tested in the next couple of weeks as the URC side start to sort of filter their players down into their Currie Cup side. You've got the Pumas who are playing really well, and it'll be interesting to see where the Cheetahs finish up because they don't have an excuse not to be winning the Currie Cup, really, to be brutally honest. And especially not, at the expense of a Pumas or a Griquas, for example. They are supposed to be the 5th best side in the country. That's kind of why they're in the in the Challenge Cup. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go in the next couple of months because they really need to make sure they do establish themselves and reaffirm themselves as the top, the top side after the URC side, so they can start to sort of put a bit of pressure on them to sort of be noticed a bit more. But if they can't sort of keep this format and all of a sudden they start losing to and they don't make, for example, Currie Cup playoffs and they're sort of finishing 6th or 7th, which at the moment they're not looking up, at the moment they're tied first, then it would sort of lead to speculation that maybe they're not all that. So I don't think that's the case. I do think they are the 5th best team in the country. But now they need to start showing it. And they have lost a couple of players. CS Masuku, for example, will be moving on. A couple of players have re-signed. So it's an interesting couple of months ahead for that franchise. A very frustrating loss to the Griquas, and one where I think referee Griffin Colby had a direct influence on, in that there was a knock-on in the build-up to the final, the winning try that wasn't called. So a draw would have been a fair result for the Lions versus the Griquas. What's been interesting is this Lions side started really poorly. And since they've sort of, they found 2 wins, and they started to gel a bit. Now, the reason I think that they are potential contenders is that this weekend is their last weekend of URC rugby. And they're playing against the Bulls this weekend. It'll be very interesting to see the two sides that either team put out, because the Bulls have to win in the URC. The Lions, I'll tell you what, they can kind of probably afford to not win. I mean, the winning the URC game is not that important. So maybe it'll be interesting to see if they shift their focus to Currie Cup. And from next weekend, they'll be able to pick their full URC side within the Currie Cup. So it'll be interesting to see how they do fare, and whether they can sort of turn themselves around, get themselves to that top 4. Once you get to play off rugby, you just need 2 good performances and you can win a Currie Cup. So yeah, I'm very keen to see how the Lions do, and whether they can maybe sort of prioritize the Currie Cup as maybe a bit of incentive to try and keep some players, try and look at signing some new players as well. So maybe I need to take a bit of accountability with this, because a couple of weeks ago, during the last sort of 5 things I learned, I talked about how it's been very watchable as a competition. And we were very worried about whether it was going to be a good competition, whether it's going to be worth it, whether we're going to get crowds and stuff like that. And I think we have seen some decent crowds in certain games and some pretty poor crowds in other games. But the product worries me, and it's for several reasons. For example, on Sunday I did a watch along, and I was very frustrated at 2 major aspects. First of all, the officiating. I think Griffin Colby is not good enough, to be honest. I thought he had a really poor performance on Sunday, and as I said, not picking up that knock on, or allowing the knock on to continue, which was blatantly exactly the same as one earlier to the Lions, and that cost the Lions, 2 points. Is not acceptable, really, and it's ruining the competition if you're going to have bad officiating. And officiating is very much in the spotlight at the moment. And I don't really like harping on about referees. I just think it's very counterproductive. There's other things we should be focusing on, but it is a worry. And for me, what the second worry is that I thought the Supersport production on Sunday was pretty poor. We didn't see a lot of replays, for example, and just genuinely it felt like the Supersport sort of beat him. It felt like a game where they had to broadcast it, but they don't really want to be broadcasting it. And it's frustrating, because we know how Supersport is a world-class broadcaster. And, they're doing such cool things, especially with like Supersport schools and stuff like that. But it's sad when I can go watch a Supersport schools game and the production quality is higher than that of the Currie Cup game. And if we're going to make the Currie Cup important, if we're going to try and keep it going, we need to ensure that it gets the attention it deserves. And that means a very good production. It means good level of officiating. We need to try and do more. I think we need to be more innovative about stadium selection, for example, to try and get crowds in. I'd far rather get a 4,000 crowd at a local club game than get 1,000 people at Ayers Park, or 2,000 people at Ayers Park. I'd rather get 4,000 people into a local club stadium than 6,000 at Ayers Park, to be honest, for example, from a Lions perspective. So I thought, we saw that how the Griffins versus Pumas had quite a good crowd there, not a very particularly big stadium over there at the Griffins, but it was a decent vibe. I think we need to see a bit more of that. So I still think they need to innovate a bit more with the competition. The actual rugby on the field has been pretty good and very, very watchable. Now we need to back it up with good officiating, with being innovative in terms of your stadium choice and stuff like that, as well as, for me, pretty importantly, your production from Supersport perspective, to make sure that we are, when you go and watch a Currie Cup game, it's the best it can possibly be. So that's kind of what I took away from the entire weekend. Let me know what you did down in the comments below. Let me know if you agree or you disagree with any of my statements. I'm always up for some debate, and I really enjoy that. So yeah, and then please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you soon.